Interest in local produce is sprouting after the pandemic stirred fears of food supply disruptions. Farms we spoke to are planning to expand operations with help from schemes like a new $40 million grant aimed at ramping up production of eggs, leafy vegetables and fish. As part of CNA's Year Ahead series, Vanessa Lim finds out how Singapore is fast-tracking efforts to grow 30% of its nutritional needs by 2030.
It's a must-have in its Donbury bowls. Over 1,000 eggs are served up every week at this hawker stall in Bedok. But when COVID-19 struck, they weren't sure if they could lay their hands on their usual supply.
Our current supplier, they had to stock up during the COVID period because they weren't sure whether the delivery could still make it into Singapore itself. So because of that, what we actually experienced was a hike in price, about 2 to 3 cents per piece.
What's worse, the stall had to throw out about 20% of the eggs as they had turned bad. After this costly lesson, they warmed up to the idea of going local for some ingredients.
We tried to find, a local supplier for our eggs. The price was really much higher than what we were getting. So instead of eggs, we're actually looking to fish. The fish prices are more competitive. It's a protein that someone is willing to pay for, especially when it comes from a very clean source, very sustainable source and very traceable source.
Here in the waters of Pulau Ubin, Jeremy finds what he's looking for. A steady stock of fish. This one-year-old farm has a nursery to rear fish from eggs. This means it doesn't need to import fingerlings or young fish, making it less vulnerable to supply chain disruptions. It can produce 160 tons of fish each year, or 20 times more than what's required. The farm started selling its fish online to hook new customers after restaurant sales plunged at the start of the pandemic. Since then, e-orders have gone up by 30%, even though its fish cost roughly twice as much as imports.
We also very quickly ramp up our production of fillet. We also produce fish broth. We are seeing a little increasing in the buyer, consumer coming to our platform.
It expects to quadruple output when its second farm is up and running next year. But only 10% of fish consumed in Singapore is produced locally.
For the farmers to want to produce at that scale that make them commercially viable, there must be demand. The level of their production is not very high. So we think if we adopt more technology, we can raise the productivity to help Singapore food security.
And that's what this company is doing.
Welcome to our showroom. Go ahead, start.
It's building an indoor farm that can produce 300 tons of vegetables annually when it's completed next year. By going high-tech, it hopes to reduce overheads to keep prices low and get consumers to bite.
For indoor farm, in fact, the main cost, of course, is the utilities as well as the manpower cost itself. So, because our main core capabilities is actually in terms of engineering, so we are able to put in place many of these technologies like process automations to actually reduce human costs.
On a larger scale, plans to transform the rural area of Lim Chu Kang into a cutting-edge agri-food cluster could potentially drive costs down in the long run.
We would like to do a topography study of the area. Secondly, we also want to do some environmental study so that we better understand the ecosystem in the area. There are certain things that we can look at doing. For example, looking into developing shared facilities. We also want to look at developing infrastructures that the farmers need, such as certain roads for connectivity, electricity and water supply.
SFA says it's also studying ideas from a citizens' work group set up this year to grow demand for local produce.